Most people are living in a prison they cannot see. Not a prison of circumstance, not a prison of money or opportunity or the circumstances you were born into. A prison of level. The level of consciousness you are operating from right now is determining everything. Your relationships, your finances, your health, the quality of your thoughts at 3 a.m., the ceiling you keep hitting no matter how hard you push against it. And here is what nobody tells you. There is a map, an ancient, precise, extraordinarily detailed map of exactly where you are and exactly what is blocking you from where you could be. It is over 5,000 years old. It has been hidden in plain sight inside every major wisdom tradition on Earth. And once you see it, once you understand what level you are actually operating from and why, you will never be confused about why your life looks the way it does again. Stay with me. Because what I am about to show you is not spirituality. It is architecture. The architecture of you. The ancient Indian teachers called them chakras, wheels, spinning centers of energy located along the spine, from the base of the body to the crown of the head. For centuries, the Western world dismissed this as mythology, as the colorful superstition of a pre-scientific culture that didn't know better. And then the neuroscientists arrived, and they found something they were not looking for: 7 major nerve plexuses along the spinal column. Dense clusters of neural tissue, each governing a different region of the body, each associated with a different branch of the autonomic nervous system, each linked to a different cluster of psychological functions and emotional responses. 7 locations, corresponding almost exactly to the 7 chakras mapped by teachers who had no microscopes, no imaging technology, no neuroscience. They were not guessing. They were observing from the inside, with the only instrument they had, consciousness itself. And what they mapped was not a spiritual fairy tale. It was a developmental system, a hierarchy of human psychological evolution. 7 levels through which a human being can move upward from survival to transcendence, or in which they can remain stuck, sometimes for an entire lifetime, without ever understanding why. Most people never make it past level 3, and the reason is not what you think. Here is what I need you to understand before we begin the descent. These are not 7 separate things. They are 7 stages of a single journey. The journey from fear to freedom, from reaction to creation, from the person who is controlled by life to the person who consciously participates in its construction. Each level has a lesson, a specific psychological territory that must be understood and integrated before the next one opens. And each level has a trap, a place where the ego gets comfortable, convinces itself it has arrived, and stops moving. Most people are living their entire lives in the trap, not because they are not intelligent, not because they are not working hard, but because nobody ever showed them the map. You are about to see it. Level 1, the root Muladhara, the foundation, the first prison. This is where everyone begins, and this is where more people are permanently living than any other level. You know this level. You have lived inside it. Some part of you may be living inside it right now. It feels like this, a constant low-level hum of threat, the sense that the ground beneath you is not entirely stable, that things could fall apart, that safety is provisional, conditional, always one bad day from being revoked. At this level, every decision is made from one question: am I safe? Not consciously. The question runs beneath every thought, every interaction, every financial choice, every relationship dynamic. It is the operating system, and it is ancient, older than language, older than civilization, wired into the most primitive structures of the nervous system. The root chakra governs survival, the body, the physical world, shelter, food, safety, the primal sense of being permitted to exist. And here is the trap. Most people mistake this level for realism. They call the constant vigilance pragmatism. They call the chronic threat detection being responsible. They build their entire lives around the management of danger, accumulating security not because they need it, but because the nervous system that has never felt safe cannot stop seeking it. The psychological signature of being stuck here is this. Your life is organized around preventing the worst from happening rather than building toward the best that is possible. You are playing defense all day, every day. And defense, as anyone who has ever tried to win a game playing only defense knows, does not win. The lesson of the root is not to eliminate fear. It is to establish genuine safety in the body, in the nervous system, in the felt sense that you are allowed to exist here without constant vigilance, so that the enormous energy consumed by survival can be redirected towards something more than survival. The integration looks like this. You stop white-knuckling your life. You build real foundations, financial, physical, relational, not from panic, but from clarity. You address the actual sources of instability rather than managing the anxiety that instability produces. And then something remarkable happens. Energy that has been tied up in the permanent crouch of someone waiting for impact becomes available. And you discover there is a second level, one that most people brush past without ever truly inhabiting. Level 2. The sacral svadhisthana, the place of feeling. The second trap. This is where it gets interesting, and this is where it gets dangerous. The second level is the world of sensation, emotion, desire, pleasure, creativity, and connection. It is the level at which life stops being about survival and starts being about experience. And the people who open this level, who have done enough work at the root to feel basically safe, often get completely consumed by it, because feeling good is extraordinarily powerful. The sacral chakra governs what you want, not what you need. What you want, the pull of pleasure, the draw of connection, the hunger for experience, for beauty, for sensation, for the specific electricity of being alive in a body that can feel things. At this level, you discover that you are not just a survival machine. You are a sensing being. And that discovery, after years or decades of living at the level of pure survival, can be intoxicating. This is why so many people who escape poverty become addicted to wealth, why so many people who escape emotional numbness become addicted to intensity, why so many people who finally allow themselves to feel after years of the root's grey vigilance cannot stop chasing the next feeling. The trap of the second level is this: you confuse pleasure with meaning. You mistake the intensity of an experience for its depth. You begin organizing your life around the maximization of feeling, more sensation, more stimulation, more connection, more experience, and you call this being alive. But you are not free here. You are just in a more colorful prison. The person controlled by their desires is not more liberated than the person controlled by their fears. They are just more comfortable. The lesson of the sacral is not to suppress desire. It is to understand that you are larger than your desires, that you can feel fully without being owned by what you feel. That genuine creativity, which is what this level is ultimately about, requires the ability to channel sensation rather than be consumed by it. When this level integrates, something shifts. The energy that was scattered across 1,000 wants and pleasures begins to consolidate, and you feel the pull of something new. Level 3. The solar plexus manipura, the fire of the self, the level where most people stop. Pay attention here, because this is the level that the modern world has made into a destination. The third chakra is the seat of personal power, will, discipline, identity, the sense of I that knows what it wants and pursues it, the self that acts rather than reacts, the ego in its most functional form, not as obstacle, but as engine. This is the level of achievers, the hustle culture, the self-optimization, the endless pursuit of excellence and accomplishment, and the kind of identity that can be measured, demonstrated, and defended. And it is genuinely powerful. The person who has integrated levels 1 and 2 and arrived at 3 with clarity, who has established safety, understood their emotional landscape, and now has the focused will to pursue what they want. That person can build remarkable things. But, and this is the trap most high achievers never see, the third level, if it becomes the destination, produces a very specific kind of suffering. The suffering of someone who has everything they worked for and still feels that something is missing. The suffering of someone who has built an identity so strong, so defended, so carefully constructed that they cannot let it be wrong, cannot admit weakness, cannot change direction without feeling like they are losing themselves. The solar plexus without the higher levels is will without wisdom, power without purpose, the ability to get what you want without knowing whether what you want is worth getting. The psychological signature of being stuck here is this: your worth is entirely dependent on your performance. When you are winning, you feel like yourself. When you are not, you feel like nothing. The lesson of the third level is not to abandon ambition, it is to build an identity that does not require external confirmation to remain intact. To become someone whose power is not contingent on winning, someone who can lose and remain whole. When that happens, when the will becomes grounded in something deeper than ego, the door to the fourth level opens and everything changes. Level 4. The heart anahata. The unstruck sound, the place where everything transforms. This is the turning point. Levels 1 through 3 are about the self, survival, sensation, power. The construction of an individual human being capable of navigating the world. Level 4 is about the dissolution of the wall between you and everything else. The heart chakra is not about romantic love. Stop whatever image just appeared in your mind. The heart chakra is about the capacity for genuine connection, the ability to feel what others feel, not as performance, not as strategy, but as the actual dissolution of the boundary between your experience and theirs. Compassion, empathy, the recognition that what is in you is in everyone else, that the fear you carry, others carry, that the longing you feel, others feel, that beneath all the performances and defenses and carefully constructed identities, every human being is running the same fundamental search for safety, for meaning, for the sense of being genuinely known. The trap of the third level, the will without wisdom, cannot survive contact with this recognition. Because when you genuinely feel another person's experience as real as your own, the question, "How do I win?" transforms into something far more interesting. How do we build something worth winning? And here is what the neuroscience shows about this level that should stop you in your tracks. The heart generates an electromagnetic field measurable several feet beyond the body. It changes based on emotional state. In genuine coherence, the state of open, loving presence that the heart chakra represents. This field broadcasts a pattern that other people's nervous systems read and mirror subconsciously before a single word has been spoken. The person operating from the fourth level doesn't convince people. They don't persuade or charm or strategically build rapport. They simply arrive. And something in the room shifts because the frequency is different. The trap of this level is equally subtle. It is the dissolution of the self in the service of others. The open heart that gives without boundary, loves without limit, receives every experience as equally valid until there is no longer a self doing the giving. This is not compassion. This is self-abandonment wearing the clothes of virtue. The integrated fourth level has both the open heart and the spine, boundless care, and clear limits, love that is not the absence of self but the expansion of it. Level 5, the throat Vishuddha, the place where truth becomes sound. The level most people silence before it speaks. Here is something you have felt but probably never named. There is a version of you that knows exactly what it thinks. That has clear perceptions, genuine opinions, an authentic response to almost everything, uncensored, unperformed, unmodulated for the comfort of whoever is in the room. And there is what you actually say. The gap between these two things is the throat chakra. The fifth level governs expression, not just speech, the full expression of what is true in you, your genuine voice, the communication that comes from the interior rather than the performance crafted for the exterior. Most people close this level very early. They learn, through 100 small corrections and social calibrations, that authentic expression has consequences. That saying what you actually think makes people uncomfortable. That the unmodulated truth of what you are is too much or not enough, or simply not what the people around you need you to be. And so you learn to edit, to translate the inner reality into something more palatable before it reaches the air. And over time, this is what nobody tells you. The editing becomes automatic. So automatic that you lose access to the original. You forget what you actually think, what you actually feel, what you would actually say if the approval of the room were not a variable in the calculation. The psychological signature of being stuck here is this. You know how to communicate. You do not know how to be heard. Because being heard requires something more vulnerable than communication. It requires the risk of expressing what is actually true in you and not knowing in advance how it will land. The trap of the fifth level is also real. It is the person who weaponizes authenticity, who uses radical honesty as a cover for cruelty, who mistakes the removal of all filters for enlightenment rather than understanding that the fully opened throat chakra speaks truth with the love of the fourth level and the wisdom of what is to come. Truth without love is just accurate damage. The integrated fifth level is this. You say what is true. From the place where the truth is kind, not because it has been softened, but because it has been felt first. And when this level opens, when your voice becomes genuinely yours again, something extraordinary happens to the people around you. They trust you, not because you have said the right things, because they can feel that you are not saying the wrong ones. Level 6, the third eye, Ajna, the witness, the level where the map itself becomes visible. This is where it becomes difficult to explain, not because it is mystical, because the instrument being described is the instrument doing the describing. The sixth chakra is the seat of perception itself, not what you perceive, how you perceive. The meta-awareness that watches your own mind operating, that can observe your thoughts without being identical to them, that can witness your patterns from outside them, that can see the machinery of your own consciousness with enough distance to understand how it is constructing your experience. Most people believe they are their thoughts. The sixth level reveals that you are the awareness in which thoughts arise. This is not philosophy. It is a direct, experiential shift, and when it happens even briefly, it is one of the most disorienting and liberating moments a human being can have, because from inside the thought, you are trapped by the thought. From the position of the witness, you have a choice. The psychological breakthrough of this level is this: you begin to see your patterns as patterns rather than as reality. The anxiety that felt like accurate threat assessment reveals itself as a learned response running on outdated information. The identity that felt like truth reveals itself as a construction, useful, necessary, but constructed. The story you have been telling about your life reveals itself as one possible story among many, and stories can be rewritten. The trap here is the one the spiritual traditions warn about most urgently. It is the inflation that comes with genuine insight. The person who discovers the witness and mistakes the witnessing for completion, who uses the distance of awareness to bypass the work of the lower levels rather than integrate them, who floats above their own life in a state of detached observation and calls it awakening when it is actually another, more sophisticated form of avoidance. The sixth level is not the destination. It is the view from high enough to see the whole path. And when you have that view, when you can see where you have been, where you are, and where the path leads from here, there is only one level remaining. Level 7. The crown Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus, the level with no ceiling. I'm going to be precise here because this is the level most susceptible to misrepresentation. The seventh chakra is not a spiritual achievement. It is not a state you reach and then remain in. It is not the reward at the end of the path. It is the recognition, direct, experiential, impossible to fully communicate and unnecessary to communicate to anyone who has had it, that the separation between you and everything else is not the fundamental reality, that the individual self, which the entire journey from level 1 has been constructing and refining and integrating, is also transparent. That beneath the person, beneath the identity, beneath even the witness, there is something that has no edges, something that was never born, something that cannot be threatened, not because it is invulnerable, but because it was never separate enough to be in danger. The crown chakra is where the great mystics in every tradition arrived and ran out of language. Rumi dissolved into it and produced 60,000 verses trying to point at what could not be said. The Zen teachers pointed at it with koans, questions with no logical answer, designed to break the thinking mind so direct experience could step through. The Sufis called it fana, annihilation, and then baka, subsistence, the self returning after the dissolution, but changed, no longer solid, no longer defended, no longer organized around the protection of an identity that now understands itself as provisional and luminous and completely continuous with everything it was afraid of losing itself in. The psychological signature of this level, to the extent that psychology can reach here, is this: the end of the war with what is, not passivity, not the absence of will or preference or the full, fierce, engaged pursuit of what matters, but the deep, unshakable peace of someone who knows, in the bones, that the outcome does not define them, that the silence beneath the noise is always there, that what they are cannot be taken. This is not the end of suffering. The embodied human being at level 7 still experiences the full range of human experience. What ends is the suffering about the suffering, the resistance to reality, the war. Here is what I need you to understand. This journey is not linear. You do not complete level 1 and graduate to level 2 and leave the first level behind. You carry all 7 with you. And the work, the real work, is not the single dramatic ascent from base to crown. It is the daily, unglamorous, unremarkable practice of noticing which level is running the show in any given moment. When you are in a financial panic, that is level 1. When you cannot stop chasing the next pleasure, that is level 2. When your worth is entirely contingent on your performance, that is level 3. When you have closed your heart to protect yourself from being hurt, you know where you are. When you are saying things you don't believe to people whose approval you don't actually need, level 5. When you are so identified with your thoughts that you cannot see them as thoughts, level 6 has not yet opened. The map is not a judgment, it is a diagnostic, and once you have the diagnostic, once you can look at any moment of your life and ask, what level is this coming from, you have something most people never have: choice. Not the choice between outcomes, the choice between levels. The choice to respond from the highest level available to you in this moment rather than the lowest one that has been activated by the current circumstances. This is what the ancient teachers meant by awakening, not a single event, a practice, the daily, committed, increasingly automatic practice of catching yourself in the lower levels and finding your way back up, back to the heart, back to the voice, back to the witness, back to the vast, quiet, unshakable thing that is watching all of it and has never, not once, been threatened by any of it. You have been living at a level, and the level you have been living at has been building your reality. Your relationships are the expression of whichever level you are operating from when you enter them. Your finances are the materialization of the level you occupy when you make decisions. Your health is the body keeping the score of the level your nervous system has been running in, chronically, consistently, mostly unconsciously, for years. This is not a verdict. It is a map. And maps do not tell you that you are lost. They tell you where you are, so that you can choose, with full information, with clear eyes, with the understanding that the path is real, and the levels are real, and the movement between them is available to any human being willing to do the work, where to go next. Level 1 keeps you alive. Level 2 makes you feel alive. Level 3 makes you effective. Level 4 makes you real. Level 5 makes you heard. Level 6 makes you free. Level 7 makes you whole. You are already on this journey. You have always been on this journey. The only question was whether you had the map. Now you do. The only question that remains is how high you are willing to go.